Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 721, and today's date is July 20th, 2015, and the title of this episode is The Economy Sinks Lower as the Layoff Bloodbath Continues. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, out in Greece, we understand the bankers have persuaded Tsipras into doing things he said he wasn't going to do. He went against the people, and now we see the bankers are in complete control of the Greek government. And when we look at this entire situation, we see that Germans, they completely disapprove of this new Greek deal. 56% of respondents in a poll said they disapprove of the newly proposed Greek deal. Out of the 56% disapproving, 23% saw it as a very bad idea, very bad plan, just very bad altogether. And all this is going to do, it's going to put Greece further and further into debt. It's not going to spur economic growth. And what's very interesting today is that they're saying that, look, Greece made its payment of 6.25 billion euros, and they paid off the IMF, the ECB. And what actually happened here? I mean, the corporate media is out there saying like, oh, look, Greece is out of trouble. Everything is fine. Well, they got a new credit card. They took out the cash on that credit card and they used it to pay off their old credit card. That's all they did. So now what do they have? Well, let's see. They paid the interest payments to the IMF, the ECB, and Greece has what? More debt. Nothing was solved. Actually, it's worse for Greece. And the situation is not going to get any better whatsoever. We understand the banks have opened up. They were shut down for 3 weeks with capital controls. Capital controls are still in effect. The banks are open. So basically, instead of taking out 60 euros per day, the people are allowed to take out 420 euros for the entire week, and they can split it up any way they want, which is pretty much the same exact thing. They're limiting the people in what they can take out. The stock market is closed right now until further notice. They just open this up so businesses are able to transfer money back and forth. The people are in the same spot. They can't transfer any money out of the country. They can't get to their money. So nothing has really changed. Who cares if they open the doors? They're in the same situation. We see the Greek government, they're still pushing the Turkish pipeline deal, where the Greek energy minister is saying that, yes, this is a good deal for the Greek people. And what's happening at this point is that the European Union is putting a lot of pressure on Greece. They want them to cancel this deal. They don't want they don't want them to implement this deal with Russia. And they're putting a lot of pressure on them to cancel it. We're going to have to watch this very carefully because, like I said, going back a couple of reports, if Greece stays with the Eurozone, how are they going to allow them to keep this deal? And it seems at this point in time, they are now putting pressure on the Greek government to say, you know something? We bailed you out. You agreed to this. You need to cancel this deal. And we can see that this is going to be the next push. We see that, even though that Greece accepted this new bailout, it's only a matter of time before Greece says, okay, we can't do this anymore. There's no economic growth. Or maybe the European nations will say, you know something? This is not working out here. Because let's take a look at this. Greece really doesn't have an economy right now. They just accepted more debt. Unemployment is hovering around 40%. And right now, how are they going to get out of this mess? They've just taken on more debt, which means more austerity, which means higher unemployment, which means Greece is completely bankrupt and now they're worse off. Yes, the creditors are getting their money, but the Greek people, the Greek government, the entire country of Greece is not going to get any better whatsoever. Actually, the economy is going to contract, and it will stop altogether if they continue on with this. And I think all they did was basically just extended what they already have. They're making it worse, taking the rest of Greece and basically stealing all their natural resources, taking all of their property, and it's all going to the central bank. And they need this amount of time to do this, and Greece is going to be left with absolutely nothing. And we're starting to see why Tsipras decided to go against his own people, because it looks like they were using the same exact scare tactics as they did here in the United States when the bankers came in front of Congress and said there will be riots on the street, there will be civil war, there will be bloodshed. And this new Greek exit black book, which was recently brought to light, is showing that the bankers said to Tsipras, listen, if you do not go along with this deal that we're showing you right here, what's going to happen is civil war is going to break out in Greece. The country is going to be forced out of the currency bloc. You will see tanks on the street. There will be bloodshed. So it looks like they use the same exact scare tactics as we had back in 2008. And Tsipras accepted the deal. United States Congress folded, and they went ahead and bailed out the corporations, the banks, etc. This time, it's going to be very different because most governments are not going to bail out the bankers. So they're going to resort to war. So you can see how this is playing out here. Here in the United States, what are we seeing? Well, we're seeing more layoffs. Barclays, they are going to cut 30,000 jobs from now until 2017. Just think of all the layoffs from these financial institutions and corporations that has happened since the beginning of 2015. Where, again, are these people going to find work? They're not. And of course, as these people are laid off, we're going to see the unemployment numbers decline once again. And instead of 5.3, we'll see it at 5.1. Because they don't count any of this. They look the other way and they just drop more people off of the unemployment. They're saying, they're not looking anymore. They don't want a job. They don't want to support their family. They don't want to go on a vacation. They don't want food. It makes no sense what they're saying here. And as the unemployment numbers go down, we're going to see retail shops continually close. We're going to see real estate get worse. And as this continues on, people are going to be scratching their heads going, what is going on here? This makes no sense. We're at 5.1% right now, and things are worse in retail. Retail sales are continually declining. Real estate's falling apart. More people are being laid off. I put my resume out there, and guess what? I can't find work. I have this job, but I want to get better pay or the same pay at a different place, and there's nothing out there. This is what's going to happen. It's already started. All of this makes no sense. Now, if the economy is doing so well, we're in this incredible recovery. They're telling us everything is fine. Why are all these financial institutions laying off people? Why are corporations laying off? Why is Microsoft, Dell, IBM laying off all these people? Why are stores closing? Something is wrong. It makes no sense. And it reminds me of August of 2013 when Obama was out there telling everyone that, listen, real estate is bouncing back. We're in a recovery. He was in Phoenix. While he was saying this, there were thousands upon thousands of people being laid off in the mortgage departments because they knew real estate was in a bubble. It could not be sustained. And of course, it looked great. Then everything was on the upslide. Now look, now we're coming down the back end. All those people have been laid off because they knew the American people wouldn't be taking out mortgages. Well, they already know the collapse is coming. They already know they need to cut all of these people. They already know what's happening. We saw this back in 2008 before the stock market came down. All of those companies like Bear Stearns, AIG, Lehman, they were laying off people already. Many companies were laying off before October 2008 when the market came down and continually crashed into 2009. They already know something is up, and they did it during the summer, and here we are in the summer. The same thing is happening. Now, President Hollande said something very odd, but not really surprising. He said that the 19 countries using the euro need their own government, complete with a budget and parliament to cooperate better and overcome the Greek crisis. Circumstances are leading us to accelerate, Hollande said. I guess this is part of the New World Order, the one government, because you can see if all these euro countries come together, there will be one country with one leader that tells all of these countries what to do. They lose their sovereignty. It looks like this is what's happening. And then you could take the European government and the US government and combine them. And then combine the Canadian government. And then the Central American governments. And you can see how they're trying to do this slowly, meticulously. In other words, France just called for the creation of the United States of Europe, where the dominant power Germany is in charge and where the people of all the smaller, weaker countries are slaves to them. This is what we are seeing right now. And it's continuing. Their plans are in motion and they're ramping this up. They know they have a certain time period here. They know that things are starting to fall apart. So they're doing whatever they possibly can to push their agenda. We see Russia now is making deals in Mexico. Russian oil major Luke Oil intends to take part in new tenders on oil fields in Mexico, right next to the United States. We see that China's renminbi, yuan, may become the world's fourth most used international currency, replacing the Japanese yen. The International Monetary Fund has raised the RMB internationalization index from 0.02 in 2009 to 2.47 in 2014. The top three currencies are the dollar, the euro, and the British pound. In January 2014, the renminbi had surpassed the Swiss franc to become the seventh most used currency in the world. This is why the IMF right now is looking at the yuan/renminbi to include it in the SDRs as a reserve currency. And of course, as we know, the United States government central bankers, they are doing whatever they possibly can to stop this from happening. This is what I believe happened in China, where they're hitting their stock market, trying to bring it down to make it look like, see, it doesn't make sense to include their currency. Their economy's falling apart. And this kind of backlashed here in the United States, and this is why we saw the New York Stock Exchange come down. It wasn't a glitch, it wasn't a bug, it wasn't a software upgrade. If it was a cyber attack, believe me, the US government would have been all over that, blaming a country. They were unprepared for this, and they threw the kill switches to stop the market from crashing. Then they wiped out all the trades, all those people that were selling off, and the next day, everything was perfectly fine. Because if there truly was a software upgrade, or let's say a cyber attack, in 3 to 4 hours, there's no way, first of all, they were cleaning up a cyber attack. It'd be impossible to find out what damage it's done, where to look for it, how to clean it up, and then bring everything back up. If it was a software glitch, they would have to back out everything. It would take a lot longer than they're saying. And first of all, they wouldn't be doing this during a trading week. I discussed this many times before. They would have two separate systems, a test system, production system. Most likely they would start this Friday night to test it all through the weekend. And this would be weeks before they actually needed the upgrade. And this, they're trying to tell us they needed this done 3 days before they were going to have this test on a weekend. It makes no sense whatsoever. Now, as we know, the government is continually spying on the American people. I know the Patriot Act expired and they voted in the USA Freedom Act, and all they did was transfer who was actually spying on the people. Instead of the government, they transferred all over to the corporations, and all the US government has to do is order that information. And this is why they're trying to pass CISA, because that will allow the companies to give all of that information over to the US government, and the companies will not be held liable whatsoever. And this is why we see all of these cyber attacks. And again, the US government central bankers, they don't want the American people to have privacy. They don't want encryption. They want none of this. They want you out there where they can spy on you. They know exactly what's going on, and they take your data, they correlate the information, and they make a social profile. This is what they are doing. I mean, there are certain ways you can protect yourself. You can create your own encryption, create the method, the key. The government will not be able to break this. The off-the-shelf encryption, right now, they know the method, and it's very easy for them to come up with the key. A lot of the software companies, they have backdoors into, and those that they don't, the FBI director is trying to make the case where they want the backdoors. I mean, there's other ways to do it. You can use Block and Pocket. These are sleeves or cases for your cell phone, your iPad, your credit cards, your driver's license. It's made up of silver and other metals. It's interwoven into this fabric, and it blocks the signal and it protects you. It makes it so they can't track you. And you can find that at blockandpocket.com. There's another way. There's an inventor. His name is Benjamin Caudell. He announced his device dubbed the proxyham, which was going to literally change everything about how those concerned with privacy could connect to the internet. So those people that were concerned about privacy, this new device was going to protect you. It was called proxyham. It is a hardware device which utilizes both Wi-Fi and the 900 megahertz band to act as a hardware proxy, routing local traffic through a far-off wireless network and significantly increasing the difficulty in identifying the true source of the traffic. So basically, if you turn this on, it would bounce this off different areas. The government would not know how to track you whatsoever. What Caudell had built is a device that would mix up your personal Wi-Fi signal in such a way that no one, not even the NSA, could track down where it was originated. And of course, the government does not like this. This was done on an open source platform. He was going to reveal all of this, how the full functioning proxyham worked, at the DEF CON hacking conference. His presentation was canceled. No reason was given. He posted some cryptic tweets, and people are scratching their head. They don't know what happened. Why all of a sudden the turnaround on this? Most likely, just like we've seen in the past with the government, they've come in, taken his device, and said, no, you're not doing this. We cannot have this. And the U.S. government central bankers, they're very nervous about this. They need to keep tabs on the people. This is why they're continually pushing cyber attacks. And we see the most recent one on Ashley Madison. Now, this site is a site that allows people to have affairs, where people can go on there, put their information, find someone else, have an affair, and it's all kept completely secret. It keeps your sexual fantasies and all those things. And this site was hit. And the cyber attackers are demanding that they permanently shut down the site, or they'll release the customer records including the profiles, secret sexual fantasies, which will match their credit card transaction, real names, and addresses. Now think about this for a second. If there are any congressmen in this database, because there's 37 million users, their names would be released. What better way to push legislation than to blackmail people? Because what we've been seeing up to this point is that they are continually hitting, and when I say they, most likely it's the NSA, a lot of it is tracking back to the NSA. They are hitting these sites and getting surface information. Now they have this site, which holds a lot of names, which they could send out, and these senators, these representatives, could be implicated in this. And we know the legislation is pending in Congress. Now, if this legislation is passed in the next week or so, or a couple of weeks, we know right there and then they were nervous, they were worried, and they said, listen, don't release our information, we will pass this legislation. And if the legislation is passed and all this disappears, we know exactly what happened. Now, we understand the U.S. government central bankers. They've been trying for years and years to chip away at all our rights. They're trying to convince us that these are not our rights to have. They can take them away whenever they want, but we know they cannot. So what they do is they create laws that actually wrap around them, and they try to convince people that, oh, since this law is here, listen, you don't have this specific right in the reading of the rights. And that is not true. Those laws are completely null and void because there's nothing above our rights. So whatever they create doesn't pertain because it infringes, it limits our rights. But they continually try. Representative James Clyburn introduced a bill, and we talked about this briefly. The bill is called H.R. 3051. Right now, as it stands, you can go in and purchase a weapon. They'll do a check, and if 3 days goes by and they don't hear from the FBI, the gun owners can release the weapon to you. And they're saying that this is a problem because the FBI has not finished their check. So now what they're saying is, according to this new bill, if they do the check and 3 businesses go by, you cannot have the weapon until the FBI comes back with a yes or a no. And if the FBI never comes back, you can never have the weapon. So how do you think they're going to use this new law? They're going to restrict people from getting firearms. That's basically what's happening here. So if we really look at this, was this really a problem? Well, the delays in this check resulted in about 2,511 actions for firearm retrievals. That's it. Or 0.3% of total delays. Thus, in over 99.6% of delay cases, the delay was less than 3 days. The FBI could not substantiate the person was prohibited, or the FFL did not transfer the firearm. And that hardly seems to indicate a public safety crisis demanding congressional intervention. It really doesn't. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to make it a big deal, and they're bringing this up from the Charleston shooting, because all of this is part of their agenda, to create laws and to remove the weapons from the people of the United States. This is their whole agenda. And we can see from what Obama is doing, he's taking it to the next level. He is going to introduce something to ban a large number of Social Security benefit recipients from owning guns. The Obama administration is right now attacking gun owners using Social Security benefits. Basically, what they're doing is they're saying any of those people receiving Social Security that lack the mental capacity to manage their own affairs cannot have a weapon. I mean, this would affect millions of people. And what exactly does he mean by manage your own affairs? I mean, he says, if you're incompetent, what does that actually mean? If someone else is handling your your situation with finances, you can't own a weapon. Basically, they're looking for anything they possibly can to push their agenda. Now, you have to remember, Social Security, you paid into this. This is not actually the government's money. This is your money that you paid into the system, which they held and promised to give you a retirement when the time comes. That's it. So this is not money from the government. They're not giving a handout. You paid into the system. It is your money. Just like if you set up a retirement fund. That's what they did. They set up a retirement fund and you paid in each time. And they're trying to use this to push the gun agenda. That's it. That's what they're doing. Their whole agenda is to remove the weapons. Because you have to be a little bit nervous about those people receiving their retirement owning a weapon. Because when was the last time we had a retiree out there causing problems with their weapons? Think about this for a second. And again, this completely violates the Second Amendment. So whatever they're trying to do, it is completely null and void. Now, out in Nigeria, we understand while President Goodluck Jonathan was in office, he said, we are not letting the United States into our country to fight this made-up terrorist group that was most likely created by the United States government central bankers. And he kept them out of Nigeria. Nigeria has a very close relationship to China. Then there were elections, and there was a new Nigerian president elected, Buhari. And right now we see the U.S. has finally gotten into Nigeria. Right now they've made a deal with Nigeria, and together the U.S. and Nigeria will defeat Boko Haram. Now, of course, the country will be put into war. There'll be a humanitarian crisis. They'll try to push China out. And this is how the United States government central bankers goes into a country wherever China is and tries to push them out. We see this in Sudan. We see it in other African nations. We're seeing it in Nigeria right now. And Nigeria has quite a bit of oil. We see in Afghanistan, we talked about this quite a bit also, that the United States government central bankers are never going to leave Afghanistan. They have lithium, they have copper, China and Russia are in there, they have oil, it's in a strategic location, they have the poppy fields where they create opium, they sell it covertly to other nations to pay for their missions. And right now, we see the Islamic State in Afghanistan. And we see that there are now rumblings of how the U.S. cannot leave Afghanistan because of the Islamic State. The Islamic State has provided new ammunition to the Pentagon and Afghan officials, and they're going to persuade the White House to reverse its decision to pull out the U.S. troops. Well, that didn't take long. We were talking about this for quite a while. And here we are today. They are using this to push the agenda. Their argument is that the same security collapse that occurred in Iraq could happen in Afghanistan. And what they're really saying is that the people of Afghanistan are rising up, like those people in Yemen, Libya, Lebanon, Iraq, and they're going to have the same exact situation where those people are going to overthrow the puppet regime and put in a people's government. And they do not want this to happen. And this is why the United States government central bankers will not be leaving Afghanistan. Now, out in Ukraine, we see the people are getting sick and tired of the puppet government, and they are marching on the streets, and they're carrying flags and banners that read, "No to rising tariffs," "Increase pensions," "Where are the reforms?" "We are dying of hunger." They're angry about the rising costs of energy, the collapse of their economy. And we can see that the people there are starting to realize that this is not a good situation for them. Actually, it is awful. Their country was better off before the United States government central bankers came in and had a coup d'etat. Now, the Kiev government is continually saying that, yes, we're following the Minsk II agreement, we're doing everything we need to do, and it seems like they're just out there using propaganda to convince everyone that they're following along and they're doing what they need to do. Just like making those amendments in the Constitution, which they really didn't make. And we can see right now the Donetsk and Lugansk people, they have been pulling back their military assets in Kiev. They haven't really gotten the order. So they came out and said, listen, okay, we will pull back our military assets if we see the Donetsk and Lugansk people do it first. Well, they are doing it. And they're saying once they pull it all the way back, then we will decide when we should do it. And this is what they're doing at this point in time. And as the Donetsk and Lugansk people were pulling back their weapons, Kiev opened fire on them. And they started shooting at the forces as they were pulling back. And there are reports that they're continually just moving their military assets to different parts of the contact line, never pulling back their equipment. We see Canada is in there, and they're teaching the National Guard how to better deal with the growing menace of improvised explosives in the eastern part of the war-torn country, how to detect and dismantle bombs. Now, if we have this Minsk II agreement for a ceasefire, why do they need all of this training? Something doesn't seem right, because if they're talking about implementing all these things in the Minsk II ceasefire agreement, they wouldn't have war. They would have a ceasefire. The Donetsk and Lugansk area would have their own separate area. All sides would remove their military assets. But it seems like the training is continuing in Ukraine, preparing for something big. Now, as Kiev and the United States government central bankers continually tell everyone that Poroshenko is following the Minsk II agreement, everything looks great, we have this ceasefire, they decide to have a drill inside of Ukraine. Nearly 2,000 troops from 18 countries are taking part in NATO's Sabre Guardian Rapid Trident 2015 exercises that started in Ukraine's Western Lviv region on Monday. So we see there are troops from Belgium, Bulgaria, Canada, Estonia, Spain, Sweden, US, Lithuania, and they decided to do this in Ukraine while the Minsk II ceasefire agreement is trying to be followed. And we know there's been many violations. We know there's still shelling going on. Why in the world would they do this right now? It makes no sense. Why would you bring in all of these countries into this area to train? So it seems like something is going on and something is up. We see the right sector installed checkpoints at the border of Transnistria. We see Poroshenko is hoping to regain control of the Donbass before the end of 2015. He's saying he's fulfilled everything that he had to do in the Minsk II agreement, and now Russia must withdraw illegal armed formations, close the border, and give the border control back to Ukraine. So he's trying to convince everyone that he followed everything in the Minsk II agreement, that they will have control of the southeastern area, and all Russia has to do is remove its armed forces. But again, Russia says this is not part of the Minsk II agreement, and we don't have armed forces in Ukraine, so there's nothing to pull back. Victoria Nuland is out there, and she is saying that we might have to scale up the costs. We might have to put pressure on Russia to fulfill the Minsk II agreement. Let's see. Russia came out. They presented the Minsk II ceasefire agreement to Poroshenko. Halan and Merkel were there to negotiate this. And the United States is not involved in this whatsoever, but they're saying that Russia needs to abide by this. Well, they're the ones who created it. They're the ones who pushed for it. Because if you remember, the southeastern people were pushing the forces of Kiev back, pushing the forces so far back they could have taken over the entire country. Why in the world would they retreat, ask for a ceasefire, and then attack again? It makes no sense. So what they're saying right now makes no sense. What Nuland is saying makes no sense. She's saying that Russia must fulfill its obligation to the Minsk II agreement, and if the violence increases, we're prepared to put more pressure on Russia. That's very interesting. What happens if the violence increases because of Kiev? There are no penalties. There's nothing. So you can see where they're coming from here. And all this talk about Russia having troops in there, about them building up on the border. Well, again, this has happened many, many times before. U.S. Ukraine is going to fly over Russia once again between July 20th and the 25th on an OC-135B observation aircraft to see what is going on. And guess what they're going to see? Absolutely nothing. If you notice, the corporate media never really reports on that part. That the U.S. flew over and Ukraine flew over and they found absolutely nothing. Because if they were flying over, because they're allowed to take pictures, they would have the pictures all over the place showing the forces. But guess what? They see absolutely nothing. We see right now that the United States government central bankers, they have signed and dated plans that they drew up to invade Syria. The plan, as described by the Fortune 500 funded Brookings Institution, a corporate think tank that has previously drawn up plans for the invasion, occupation, and surge in Iraq, is to occupy border regions of Syria with U.S. Special Forces to then justify a nationwide no-fly zone if and when Syrian forces attempt to retake the safe zones. And we discussed this before. What they're doing is those areas that were captured by the Islamic State, which is the proxy army of the United States government central bankers, they are going to say those are safe zones. And if Syria makes an attempt to attack any of these safe zones, they have their excuse because they're saying that is no longer part of Syria, and we are setting up no-fly zones, and special forces are now in these areas, and they can now use them to attack Assad. The safe zones are to be used by various terrorist fronts. Brookings admits are tied to Al-Qaeda to take refuge from Syrian air power and from which to stage and launch attacks deeper into the Syrian territory. It is clear that the U.S., British, and the coalition forces have been striking the infrastructure of Syria and given a path for the Islamic State to go in to the other regions of Syria. Because if the United States really wanted to take out ISIS, all they would have done is destroyed their supply lines. And they could have stopped them in their tracks. You know, all those supplies of those pickup trucks that we see photos of, all the Islamic State marching in lines, bringing the oil back and forth in a convoy of trucks. All they had to do is destroy them. But they didn't. They went after the Syrian infrastructure. So we can see at this point in time, everything is put in place. Everything is ready to go. And they are just waiting for the right moment. And what that moment is going to be, we're going to have to watch and see. Because as we know, the only way to get U.S. forces into this area is to have that authorization for war passed. And if they can get some type of an event, if they can scare the American people just enough and scare Congress just enough, they can pass the authorization for war, because that allows the U.S. forces to go into any country where the Islamic State is, or Al-Qaeda, or Boko Haram, or Al-Shabaab, or any other terrorist organization. And this is what we are seeing happen right now. And we all need to be prepared and ready for this, because this seems like it's a complete replay of August of 2013, when they told us that Assad was using sarin gas, and we found out that no, it was the Free Syrian Army. And we can see right now we're getting closer to August. We understand Congress goes on vacation. We understand that things happen during this period. And we're going to have to watch the situation very, very close as we get closer and closer to August. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.